Welcome, everybody, to the Divine Design Podcast, Parenting for Greatness. It's nice to have you with us again. Petrus, welcome.
Thanks,
Coach.
Charles.
Nice to have you. We're going a new direction today. We're going to start a new series. And Petrus, you're going to tell us a little bit more about the series. Excited about it. We're going to be providing something which I think is short, sharp, to the point. Also, maybe those who prefer having shorter interviews, shorter bites. Yep, that'll help. So tell us a bit more about this new series we're starting.
52 Tips of Talent, inspired by Daniel Coyle's book, author of The Talent Code as well. And, I think every sports person, every youth kid needs to have that book actually close by. And after this series, I hope that, everyone understands talent more, and is inspired on how to reach and get to where they want to go, that they're really ignited. And it's going to be a fun version. It's going to be challenging for us to stay within our time frame, but we're going to do our best. But 52 Tips of Talent, don't miss this out. This is going to be incredible.
That's great. We often think talent is a one-dimensional thing, but there are so many different angles to it, aren't there? So we want to explore those different angles. Some of those might speak more to you as a parent, or even as a coach, or as a player, a child. So yeah, we're looking forward to it. Episode 1 is all about staring at what you want to become. And I think we can all relate to that in many ways, especially I think when we're children. Yeah. When we become adults, it becomes less so as children, as players. So staring at what we want to become. You've got a little story you want to share.
Yeah, there was this, small town, Groblersdal. Young boy, unfortunately, his dad passed away. His sister bought him a racket. Obviously, there weren't finances to taking up lessons, and the structure at the courts were, we had the wall, and then right next to it was the tennis court, and where I gave lessons. Way back then, they might have not been as good as they are maybe now. But anyways, long story short,
recordings.
Long story short is, this boy started hitting against the wall, just in his own way. And then what happened is, when I called everyone in, he snuck up to the fence like a little thief, and he made himself like he was a chameleon just fitting in, and he listened intently. He stared at what we explained to everyone. Mm-hmm. And, and then I send everyone out again, and I see that, yes, there he goes against the wall. And then, okay, everyone in again, and there you see he's like, okay, here's, and so back and forth. And, he ended up playing provincial tennis. For a kid that started out late, I thought he did amazing. We did pull him in finally, okay. But, that just showed you that it's not always that you've got to be with a paid professional. You could stare at something so vividly and make that your own. Yeah. I'm thinking of two players, if I'm allowed. We've got the Roger Federers. What a model for a kid to copy on stroke production in tennis. And then you look at someone like Dimitrov, who's actually called the baby fed, because I think he just stared so much at him, and obviously you don't want to be called the baby fed. He's got to create his own identity. But those are stories and examples of people staring really and making something out of it. Personally, even I'm sure you played cricket. I love Shane Warne. I love to bowl flippers and leg breaks, and you try to copy that action, and
it's about where it ended with trying to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, we were saying off air earlier on. Anybody, growing up as a young kid, you would copy bowlers' actions, for example, or can you guess the action? So I think children, we enjoy watching, we enjoy absorbing what our heroes are doing, but sometimes it doesn't always work out the way you thought. Off air we were just discussing heroes, and potentially sometimes things go the wrong direction, they crash and burn, and there's something to learn. You get disappointed as a child, there's this fall from grace potentially, and how do you cope with that? And I think that teaches you that we're all human, everybody can be influenced. Again, what is our foundation, for example? As you were saying that, Petrus, I was thinking of the biblical account of Zacchaeus, who saw Master Yeshua, Jesus, with the crowds, and they were following him from a distance. And it makes me think of that particular boy you were talking about, where he saw things from a distance, but he was intrigued. Perhaps he felt there was something that he could gain from that. And knowing that he might not be part of the crowd. He climbed the tree to get a better vantage point, and he was singled out later on. Obviously, when Yeshua called him out and told him to come down.
Yeah,
and gave him an instruction. Yeah, I'm going to be enjoying a meal with you later. So he was called. But so there are many parallels for us, and we'll circle back to those in these episodes. Probably give people a bit of a flavor where, yes, it's very much sport related, but we're also looking at, as sport often is, how can sport be, how does sport mimic life and life mimic sport in many ways? So there are, from our faith journey perspective, there are a few things.
Parallels, huh?
Yeah, we can go through. So how does this all apply to sport, for example, to begin with, and then perhaps even in our faith, staring at what you want to become? From a coach perspective, we're often in the middle.
Yeah.
Because you are the relatable person to the player. You are the one working with them on a daily basis. They see you, they potentially pick up habits from you, your way of thinking. You are also then transferring knowledge, know-how, mindset through to them and their parents as well, which is equally important. But ultimately, the child is learning from you, the player, we should say, is learning from you. But ultimately, they might have their eyes on the prize, which is their hero, their role model, the professional who's made it big, who they're aspiring to. So from a coach perspective, give us a flavor of the impact that you think we have staring at what you want to become. What's your role as a coach, being sort of in that middle man phase?
Well, I think also some kids learn by verbal. Mm-hmm. Some kids obviously by seeing and then feeling and experiencing. There's different ways, but demonstrations. If stage development comes in mind as well, the pro is the end result. Now it's going to be like, okay, can I trust this coach that the stage development where I'm at, is going to take me ultimately to the end result. And I just sometimes think that, you've got to be open for coaching. You've got to be open for learning as well when it comes down to the coach's role, because otherwise his voice is just going to be blanked out.
It's true. How do you deal with the pressure of being a coach where a child has got certain aspirations and you are a pivotal person in that journey? How do you deal with that pressure? Is it something that you as a coach would feel, or something that you tend to sort of put to one side? How does it go?
I think for every coach and for every player and for every coach, parents, I apologize, it's like a little triangle. It's got everyone's involved. Everyone's got to play their role. And I think the kids' goals got to become the program's goals, and they've got to match each other. So there's this expectations, commitments got to be in the right place. You're talking about controlling the controllables, and if you go outside the controllables, I think pressure is going to become intense and way too much to handle. But I think if you set little goals and achieve little goals, then you'll get finally there. It's you got. How do you eat an elephant? Piece by piece. You can't always just swallow it whole. So if you look at the big picture, you say this is where we want to go. Great, awesome. But then you've got to break it down into little pieces so that winning and succeeding is matched. Are we succeeding, not just winning?
It's true. It's a daily walk.
Yeah,
that's a fact. So I think from a relatability perspective, how you've got a child who, within the first few sessions feels that they're not creaming it down the baseline past the opponent and doing it like their heroes doing it, they watch day in and day out perhaps. Do you ever bring the story of where that hero perhaps once was, and they were also a young child who had started at some point? So where's that level of relatability? I want to aspire to something, but actually it means I can achieve it. If they could achieve it, why can't I?
Yeah. It's just impossible until someone's done it, right? And I think the best way I can answer that is, don't compare yourself. Because if you compare yourself, you're 9 years old, you've got to compare yourself where that hero was at 9. And then likewise, it's very dangerous to compare. It's very dangerous to compare. For me, it's like just go stare at it, go watch tennis. You'll be shocked that even in the tennis industry, that a young kid, they say they want to become a high level, performer, athlete, but they've never watched the sport. They've never watched it. So you've got to stare at some things. So hopefully that answers your question. But yeah.
No, you got to take it in. So we talked about the relatability of our heroes. That's why it's so. I think of episodes we had with Zane, for example, having your local heroes. Quite often, your coach. Well, it might be a hero for a while. It might wear off. I don't know. At a younger age, once they start moving on. So knowing when does the journey for you? Have you had any sort of those difficult conversations or moments when you've realized this journey, what I can offer this player, has sort of come to an end? Or how do you approach that from zooming out and looking at what's happening, saying, okay, they need more, or I can't offer them what they might need? How do you, as a coach, are there certain signs that you have from your experience? How does that work for you guys?
I think why certain coaches don't produce players is because, in all fairness, the families don't produce it because impatience. It's like, where do players come from? From a brain trust, from a group of people working together for 10 to 15 years. And so many times that you go down the route with a beginner player, you work with them for 3 years, and then now the kid's becoming pretty good, and now they look left to look to the right. They're looking for people with better players, and that's not always what's needed. The acronym for WIN, what's important now, is where's this kid now? So if you, there were times where you release players. If they don't want to be with you, you absolutely bless them and send them off in their ways. But for some kids in our circumstances, if you sometimes wish the kid just stayed for 2 more years working on fundamentals, maybe before they were left to go and pursue, their dreams and their goals. But the brain trust of 10 to 15 years. Do they really stick out?
That's why it's so important to have. I think as people, either if you as parents, people in education, people in the coaching world, if you get a really solid role model, somebody out there who's made it big, but their feet are on the ground, they are wholesome individuals, people who, or we think, knowing their public persona. But it's such a win when we get those sort of individuals that we can pin success to them for the children that we work with. And because I would say there are many of them out there. There are, but they don't always get the headlines. It's always the controversial players. If it's your McEnroes or Kyrgios, for example, these type of guys, for necessarily the entertainment value that they can give, and that's probably the equivalent of what we see online. And reminded again just this morning of some news headlines that sensationalism is such a dangerous thing. So it's a win when we get those individuals and we can say to the kids, that is a great example. For such a long time, even prior, and maybe the more experienced listeners will relate, when we had really your local heroes, your local people in your own community or in your area, there wasn't always much place for them to hide. If they got something wrong in the public sphere, public life, then everybody knew about it. So there was always that responsibility where
we're exposed.
The heroes are so far removed now from what goes on in their life. You don't necessarily know. You just see the top layer. You perhaps just see the shiny bits. And so I think calling our kids back to, I think invest maybe in. It doesn't have to be somebody who's at the top of their game yet, but it could be, I'm a primary school aged player. Actually, is there another hero or role model who's maybe at high school level, at 18? Because that's more relatable, that's more closer to home. It might be somebody that I know that I can meet up with or spend time and accessing them. That we need to maybe perhaps build in those sort of, I think that mimics what we do in life, trying to build certain relationship in put those in place, good relationships for our children, and determining what do you do as a coach when, there's something controversial has happened, and the player takes the wrong level of inspiration from some of these controversial ways of playing and behaving on the court, etc. And that then you see that in the coaching world. You then see that. How do you approach it?
Well, awareness, acceptance, commitment mentality. You've got to be made aware of certain actions and things are out of line, and then, are you going to accept it or be in denial? And then are you committed to fixing it? That's quite a simple process, but you got to set good examples. You got to, when it comes down to, usually we don't know, or there's no such thing as a bad player. Okay, but we know players have got engineering problems, and that sometimes causes the attitude problems. So take care again of the small stuff, and the big things will take care of itself. But you've got to, don't leave bad behavior. Once you leave that, and now it's because I'm seeing little Johnny do it, so now I'm copying that, and now it becomes a norm.
It's like an infection, and it'll fester,
it's going to manifest for a long time. So but all in love. I've just realized again, relationship. Does the kid trust you? And do you have the relationship to tell the kid, hey, listen, that behavior is not on. That's not who your parents want you to be. And if you change your personality to win or lose or to have bad behavior, maybe then you need to just take a break and figure out who you are before you want to.
The pressure cooker is probably under too much pressure and it's going to pop. So take a break. I think one we need to reflect on quite regularly will be the disconnect sometimes that we do find in young players' journeys, where if the parents aren't in line with what you're trying to achieve and vice versa, there's that disconnect's going to cause a problem somewhere along the line. The child grows up with, or the player grows up with, different expectations, and there's a bit of a split personality developing there. And ultimately they become an adult, and then we wonder why things turned out the way it is. So important, I think, if we zoom out, we look at a young person, a child, and it doesn't have to be a very young child, teenagers, is consistency, showing up every day, making sure that you're providing them with that consistency. That those aren't glamorous things to stare at, if you look at the title of this episode, but they are the things in the background that are quietly just making the engine run as it needs to.
Absolutely. Even I think, for parents, the coaches should always be right, in certain ways. And, the kid should know he's in her role, and the coach should know he's in her role. And same way with the parents. Let the kid be a kid, let the coach do the coaching, and let the parent be the parenting, That's a very important thing. But I'm sure that's going to be one of the tips coming in at a later stage. Tell us a little bit about the parallels with what we just said, the child, the parent, and Yeshua, Jesus. How's your view on that? Because I think there's a big, parallel working connection there. What's your view on that?
I think it's fairly simple. Everybody out there could see those parallels for what they are. You've, as a player, young player, you're learning, you're taking on advice, you're practicing, etc. And that really mimics life. What I do on my daily basis, the habits, small things like my manners. My parents hopefully are working on instilling good manners at a young age with a child, because it's not just about politeness, but that really will open doors for them instead of closing doors for them. So those are the small things, and I think if we look at the player coach and the superhero, or the role model out there for them, that really is reflected in our daily lives as what we have as a child, if I'm a child myself, but in our own families. So we take our example as dads, as men in our marriages and with our families. Our children are the players. We are, as dads, and the moms, we're coaches, and coaches with different styles, which is awesome. It's not something to
one size fits all.
That's it. We bring different things to the court in that sense. And then our Messiah, Yeshua, Jesus is that role model, is that ultimate role model who our kids should be aspiring to. And then we could probably take it a step further and say, well, looking at what we read in Scripture, the disciples, they were also, in that sense, the taught ones, but they were the players themselves, learning the craft from the ultimate life coach, who's Yeshua. And then in that context, the role model, or the epicness that is there is the Almighty. It's God Himself. So we look at all these parallels, but there's always somebody in the middle somewhere, and that somebody in the middle is a conduit. They end up being the one who will relay information, knowledge, mindset, attitude, strength, or the opposites, weakness, failure, etc., to their taught ones. And if we think about it as dads in our own homes, when we get to the point where we can take that really seriously, and it's not just a wake up, drop the kids off, go to work, come back, go to bed, and repeat, rinse and repeat. If we can step outside of that and actually realize, wow, I've got such an important role to play in my children, my family's life, and it starts at home. Taking that responsibility, drawing a line, saying, I'm not going to farm out responsibility for the coaching, in inverted commas, of my children, my family, to somebody else. And I say this all respect, not necessarily in the classroom, not necessarily on the coach on the courts, or even the pastor out there if I'm going to church. Or it has to start at home first. I have to take the responsibility and say, no, my house, this is the basic, this is the unit. Again, let's draw it back to divine design. A family was created to begin with. Man and woman, husband and wife, and the children. That is the cornerstone of any civilization. And once that goes to pot, as they say, then you can kiss the whole thing goodbye. And no wonder the enemy is always striving to break families up and to cause division and hurt and pain, because if he can break the family unit up, then we know that it's very difficult or challenging to aspire to higher honors as a family. And when I say that, to fulfill our destiny and to be what the Almighty wants us to be. So I think in that sense, being in the middle is a blessing. I wouldn't say it's a curse, but it's a challenge, because you and I know we don't always get it right, do we? We mess up. We falter. Always, our emotions might get the better of us, and that's a really big thing to absorb when you stand back and you think, my child might not necessarily, my children might not. They look up to me for a while, I suppose. Your daddy's the hero, maybe. But when they get a bit older, they're looking toward the more flashy individuals, not the middle-aged guys with dad bods. Yeah. So we get to a point where we realize, am I that important still in this situation? But we are. If we've taken that step and that decision that I still have to maintain good habits, I still have to not put pressure on myself, but I know there's a standard to hold myself.
Quite high.
That's it. Then my children will subconsciously pick up what I do, because ultimately, in any household, especially I think you've got the teenagers, they get a bit moody and tricky, and things get tricky. You have conversations sometimes that spill over somewhat. You get to a point where there might be a bit of huffing and puffing, or we end the conversation in the way that we shouldn't. And they might not see you as the ultimate role model anymore, but they're still picking up habits subconsciously, which they are more than likely, and we can say that from our own experience, are going to repeat one day as dads or mothers themselves. Small things that they pick up. And you realize, I just did that, which I said I was never going to do, or I've just behaved in that way, which I never thought I would, and I've always said I shouldn't. So our kids will pick up as their life coaches, primary life coaches, they'll pick up. And so it pays to support one another, especially as dads, support one another, not just have superficial conversations around the braai about the weather or how good the game was last night. It's all good and well, but we need to support each other on a deeper level. We need to go a little bit deeper than that and say, how are things going? And I've spotted this and that. How can I support you? Yeah. So being there for one another is so crucial, because if we don't feed ourselves, how are we going to feed our children? Spiritually, on a moral level, calling things out sometimes. This is the hard one. I've got a very good friend, if he's listening out there, he'll know. He always says, love me enough to tell me when I'm wrong, or love me enough to tell me that this is not right. And I think those relationships, but you don't want to say that to people nowadays anymore. And I think if we look at Yeshua, the Messiah, wow, how many times did he have to love people enough to say what was unpopular at the time, point a finger to say and point something out and say, this is not, and those who were keeping the status quo, those who were trying to be the role models in society didn't like it because it hit a nerve. And I think especially us as dads, we need to, it's not to relish it, but we need to take on the responsibility of saying sometimes things need to be called out. And just sometimes it means stop in your tracks.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, use a cue word. Just stop, what you're busy with. Because if that kid sees that negative action, he's going to copy it.
And equally,
if he sees the positive, he'll do the positive as well.
That's it. Sometimes that's the beauty of correction. Our Heavenly Father corrects those who he loves.
Yeah.
I don't think he'll probably not listen to this, but Rob, if you're out there, headmaster I used to work for, he always said to the kids, if I pick on you, it means because I really like you.
Yeah.
I took it in that way. I think we look at our Messiah, there are so many examples that he gives us, and I want to challenge us as the high priests and the leaders in our homes, dads, husbands, we need to go back to the Messiah and the example that he set, because that is our ultimate example. It will feed us, it will coach us, it will help us when things are going well, it'll help us when things aren't going so well, it'll give us insight. But that doesn't happen by accident. That happens with an intentional decision. I want to be like that. Yeah. And that's what the disciples did. These were plain men who weren't, didn't have masters and doctorates behind their names, PhDs and all these things. They were simple men. He said, leave what you're doing, come follow me. And it's a simple message that we need to take on board as well.
Yeah.
Los al jou ander gemors.
Stop watching the bad stuff. And stop copying the bad stuff.
Come and follow me. I am the role model. Because here is the punch probably for the episode for us. You copy, staring at what you want to become. If I as a dad, as a husband, am not staring at what I want to become, what am I staring at? Who am I staring at?
Sure.
If I don't do that, how are my children going to follow my example and get to the end goal where they need to be? So we need to face into that. It might be a big wave that's rolling in, and that big wave might scare me somewhat, but I need to face into it. I need to step into it, into that challenge. We were not made to be cowards. We were not made to stand back and just sit and be passive, because that's our issue today. That we've got too many men who are just passive, and the world will just pass them by.
Yeah,
we need to hold each other to account. We need to say, hey, come on, you were meant for more than this. Step up. I'm with you. Arm around the shoulder. Let's go. Let's do it. Let's take that wave head on. But not sitting back and just allowing the enemy to have his way. We need to be strong. That's why we were created to be strong, weren't we?
Absolutely.
So who are we ultimately staring at, Petrus? We're looking at our Messiah, our Redeemer, our King who is to come and return and sit on the throne. Who are we looking at when we look at him? And there's
what's that tag?
The phrase here from Scripture is when Jesus, Yeshua, asked his disciples, and there was a conversation with Peter as well, and he said, who do they say I am?
Wow.
And let's challenge ourselves as believers today, challenge the listeners out there. Who is Yeshua Jesus to you? Is he what your particular denomination says he is?
Yeah.
Is he what your parents taught you he is? Is he what the world has portrayed him to be? Is he what the unbeliever out there is also painting him as to be? Do we really know him? He asked these followers, the Talmudim, he asked them, he said, who do they say I am? And we know various answers might have been given, but the one that stood out was Peter's response, you are the Son of the living God. And he said, flesh has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven.
Sure.
And so there's me and you as the coach in our families. And who is he that we are aspiring to? And I think it's so easy to go down different rabbit holes as to know who he is. But it's a daily challenge to find out. And where do we go to find out? Are we listening to people? Are we listening to
Are you staring
tradition?
at the Word? I mean, are you spending time in the Word? You know, is it a living staring, or is it just from something you've
The real coaching manual,
the real coaching
the ultimate.
manual?
That is so. And I think if we can challenge ourselves there, perhaps we've got learning to do more. We
Staring
grow,
to do?
staring into the right version of our Messiah, but also do we have perhaps some unlearning to do sometimes? Because as children, we might have been influenced by somebody who had an impact on our lives, and it might only have been a quarter of revealing of who our Messiah is. I don't think we'll never fully understand, but if we can get to the point where
The depth of it.
yeah, we can never really get there. And so there are times, if we look at that, my child, me as a parent, dad, and then following the Messiah, sometimes that relationship works where I have to turn to my child and communicate. But there are times when I can't forget, I need to turn around and face Messiah as well, because my child will be looking. And so I think it's imparting to my child what I feel is important in life from a young age. And it's also then turning around and actually strengthening myself by what I'm keeping my eyes on. What is my priority? What am I facing? What am I staring at? And what do I want to become? Ultimately, my hero, my role model, the Messiah, has got a prize. He's not some untouchable golfer, tennis player, whatever. Somebody who I can never really either meet or aspire to be. And that's sort of, they're my hero for a while, and then I move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Here's my Messiah who personally sacrificed something and gave up his life for me.
Yeah.
So that connection is already there.
Yeah.
For me, I just need to own that connection and pass it on to my children.
Yeah.
And so, what are we staring at today? What are we staring at? That's probably a good question. I think, if I may, the wives, the mothers out there, if we as dads are not staring at the right thing, if we're not staring at what we should become, that is where you need to step in as well and remind us and correct us, because you are our helpers. You are our greatest supporters through thick and thin, and which we honor them for, but you know us the best. So we're vulnerable, because if the enemy can chop us down, the rest is easy.
Yeah.
And so, challenging the ladies out
almost
there.
Accountability partner, because they are staring at you from a different perspective, and they will be seeing when you're actually not the person who you want to be, or you're not doing the things you want to do.
Yeah.
So absolutely.
Right.
I hope the listeners got something out of it.
Do too.
Short and sweet. We appreciate you and looking forward to the next episode. Thanks, Charles.
Definitely. Right. Let's refocus on what we're staring at this week. Enjoy.
Absolutely. Adios.